Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio today Professor Udenta, Professor of the London College, not London College, formerly of the Abuja State University, Professor of Cultural Studies, very, very well versed. When you talk about a scholar, we are having a scholar in our studio today. Now, you are intimidating the rest of us because you see, for your birthday, you release how many books?
21 books.
21 books. I mean, this is intimidation.
Well, I'm just like warming up. It's not like the first phase of my life work.
Yes,
is what you call these 21 books.
Yes.
You know, Walter Benjamin, of course, his own construction of history and genealogy of knowledge.
Yes.
Is that in a particular book, you can celebrate a lifetime and a life work.
Yes.
In a life work can be composed in a book.
In a book.
So what I did was, divine grace must have touched me because I became intellectually illumined when I was 13.
From age 13?
Age 13, it was almost like a divine epiphany.
Something just
sparked in me. You know, I was the last in my family, you know, and the last usually, you know, is either henpecked or protected. So I didn't flower when I was very little. I was the mommy's pet. But 13, something sparked in me.
You woke up?
I woke up and started writing. And I was writing incredible amount of work. I was going to bed 3, 4 a.m. at that age. And I was reading sometimes close to 3, 4, 5, sometimes 9 books at a time. And I was designing in my head and replicating in the craft of writing complete set of works like novels, short stories, play texts, you know, poems, you know, moral reflections, social commentary. And I did that body of work between 13 and 14 and a half years and produced about 17 texts, now collected together as the 6-volume boyhood works.
Wow. I mean, and this is important, and it is important for our young people to hear Udenta discuss at age 13, waking up to the reality, the need for knowledge.
Yes,
and you
absolutely.
are hungry.
Very much.
And you are devouring books voraciously.
All over the place.
And then you began to write. Of course, if you read plenty, with any basic gift in writing, you begin
you
to
have
write.
to have the urge,
to
the
write.
urge to put something down.
I don't know if you know about it's a psychologist, Professor Jordan Peterson.
I can say I know much about him.
Professor Jordan Peterson says that the power in reading and writing. I mean, don't they say the pen is mightier than this?
Absolutely mightier than the sword.
He speaks about you want to conquer the world, learn to read.
To read. You
want to conquer the world, learn to write.
Right. What actually the project I had then was incredibly well developed, you know, and some of the texts I construed them as even reading texts for secondary school students. I'll have questions at the end of the novel. I have interpretation of Igbo expressions, a glossary of texts.
And you were in secondary school?
I was in class 3. I was just like I was just in like SS1,
JS2
or 3
yes.
or so. And the amazing thing is that I didn't limit myself to any kind of genre.
Yes.
I started with the British, you know, Encyclopedia Britannica. I was going to political philosophy and thought. I started developing interest in Marxist philosophy at the age of 14, 15.
Yeah.
And I even ventured into mysticism. You know, there was a particular, you know, Lobster and Rampa. You know,
yes, in those days.
In those days,
yes.
You know, they thought daughter from Lhasa, the Hemite, and so on there. I found this work incredibly illuminating, not because they made a lot of sense, but because of the journey of the mind they would take you.
It challenged the mind
to explore beyond the range of the terrestrial realm you find yourself. All this helped to catalyze, you know, and incentivize my spirit. And being the leader of the debating society, you know, holding my scale, not only in writing, but in speaking. So in that sense, as I grew as an artist who wrote a lot as a small person, I grew in stature too.
I mean, when I got exposed to your work in the early 90s, I kept wondering, who is this young man? Because when I read those articles that you published, and I was like, who is this young man?
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then, you know, so because clearly your writings in those days, in the 90s, your writings showed somebody who is well read.
Yes, well read. What happened was that I had and I celebrated this in one of my books, Democratic Transformation and Social Change in Nigeria, a personal journey from intellectual conscience to praxis. I didn't say consciousness, I said conscience. The conscience of the scholar, the intellectual. In every tower, What is your calling in life? To talk to a few thousand students, a few hundred students, or to transport those ideas to the wider realm? That movement from theory to practice, which you call praxis, guided me. So when I started doing graduate studies, I had a mindset, even as a youth service corps member, my decision was that by the time I finished my PhD, I would have comprehensively dealt with all the critical issues in cultural studies and literary theory in Africa.
If you read John Henry Newman's idea of a university,
yes,
this is the whole point. The university is not supposed to be this insular place. The university is ivory tower, but the ivory tower where ideas are hatched for society.
Integrative.
Yes. And unfortunately, I mean, in the last few decades in this country, we have gone down in standards.
I think there's something going on now. I have to look at the NUC new curriculum developed for the universities to be implemented from 6th September this year. That's what they say. Try to realign the vision and goals of the university to the demands of the wider society. That's an integrated university system.
And when you're talking about the area you are interested in, it's not just the demands, but the actual needs. You see, because we are in a generation now where everybody is talking about techniques, science and technology.
We call it STEM.
STEM. But people are beginning to neglect classics and philosophy and ideas. And actually, the techniques, the technology is at the service
of this
of philosophy
ideas.
Yes.
Okay, the problem there is that, and like saying goes, you took the words right out of my mouth. You know, if you go to China, for example, two amazing things will happen to you in Beijing. The monument they built for history, Institute for Historical Studies, is bigger than any state house in Nigeria. Historical studies, from the depths of the human imagination to the cradle of civilization to the contemporary new era that Xi Jinping is leading for them. Every teacher of history is subjected to close scrutiny to learn the lessons of history as a guide to the contemporary time and vision for tomorrow.
Because if you do not know where you are coming from,
you won't know where you're heading to.
No.
Do you know the second one? The monument to the Communist Party. 2-3-story building, an incredible edifice that inspires you to say, how can a system build this kind of resource in terms of party organization? The here is not even the moral question about party or the ideological inclination of the Chinese government, but the idea of building an institution of party organization, party leadership, and followership. When you find the careful use of history, in 1918, this is what happened in the first effort to build the party. In 1921, the first challenge and setback. In 1925, the long walk. In 1939, intercession with the Kuomintang, led by Chiang Kai-shek. In 1941, fight against Japanese imperialism. In 1954, Cultural Revolution. So
and with all history, with all that, why are we surprised?
Where they are today.
Where they are today.
Because they summon the vestiges of the past, the wisdom of the ancient. When the Chinese will tell you, socialism with Chinese characteristics, it is what you're evoking, Father. Evoke the mind, evoke the spirit, evoke the soul of China. They look at the mountains, the valleys, the rivers, the poetry of the ancients. They summoned these energies together and said, how do we humanize our environment? Not just the pursuit of technology, pursuit of science. If you don't have a human environment driven by the humanities, there is no way science can transform.
You see, the people who are in the West, especially in the New West, talking about America, these are areas that they need to be schooled. You know, that societies thrive just as the oak tree thrives because of the age and the roots, how deep
strong,
the roots have.
Embedded in the soil.
You can just think that people in the West think that you can come like a meteor and just flash and.
Father, the challenge I initially had with the West was when Fukuyama, who has now revised most of his thought, he visited China and said, I was hasty in pronouncing the death of history and the closure of historical processes. But it's when the last man and the end of history and the last man, he said, well, we no longer have argument in philosophy. We don't have any procreative dialogue in social practice, ideology. That is settled. Communism is over. The last man is determined. That was hasty.
Yeah,
that was for me immature and impulsive. They didn't even see 9/11 coming. They didn't see the rise of Islamic fundamentalism and the so-called war against terror. That is why most people now believe there is a decay of thought.
Yes, there is definitely. There's definitely.
Decay of
is
thought.
it not decay of thought that has now led us to the whole LGBT gender ideology that has become so crazy.
Not only crazy, it has actually eaten into the depth of the soul of those entities. Civilizations never, Paul Kennedy put that out in The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers, never will fall on the basis of external pressure.
No.
Internal decay.
This guy also worked on it. Social historian Tonyibi.
Yes, of course, I read his works.
Yeah. And Tonyibi says that there has been 29 civilizations that have risen and fallen. Not one collapsed due to external
aggression.
Each one is internal decay.
And the incredible thing they're missing in the West, and which we're going to learn a harsh lesson in Nigeria, in terms of our governance model, is that these ends do not come with a bang.
No.
They come with a whimper. It took a Roman Empire 1,000 years to fall. That's why Gibbons talk about the decline and fall of the Roman Empire. It's a 1,000-year process.
Yes. Then there will be just one trigger.
One trigger. It is over.
Yes.
So Soviet Union started imploding in the 60s,
yes.
50s and 60s, but occurred roughly 1991.
Yes.
So US civilization or imperial, what they call imperial power, is actually unraveling. I can give you an example for that, and it's a lesson for Nigeria, those of us in Nigeria. Ukraine and Russia is like a simple, geostrategic situation. One invaded the sovereign nation.
Yes.
So there should be no moral argument about who is right or who is wrong.
Yes.
On paper.
On the surface.
On the surface. But let us see who is isolated. In spite of Western massive propaganda about Russia's isolation, the global picture believes that argument. South America had two leading nations, Argentina and Brazil. One is actually in BRICS. That's the B. Argentina is pro-Russia. So in spite of invading Ukraine, the two leading nations, apart from Venezuela and Cuba and the rest of them, is leaning Russia. Middle East is the theater of Western imperial quest for wealth and resources and influence. Saudi Arabia is now in BRICS. Iran is in BRICS. Kuwait is in UAE is in BRICS. So they've lost the Middle East, Asia, China, and India.
The dollar is going.
So why is it that, in spite of Russia's reckless behavior in Ukraine, the world is rallying around Russia and saying, we've had enough of Western imperialism?
There is a scholar called Stephen Jenkinson, a Canadian. And he says that what has happened to North America is the Middle Passage. His idea is that it is the young people that migrated. It is the young people that ran away from oppression. It is the young people that ran away from poverty.
That built that society.
And they left their aged parents in Europe. Now they got to the new land as they were passing through the Atlantic, through the Middle Passage. They actually cursed their background.
Nations.
Yes.
The old civilization.
The
old world. What they call the old world.
And they threw away everything. So you now have a society without elders.
Yeah.
And he said the danger of building a society without elders is a society without memory.
Yes, apart from the lack of memory or memorialization of historical routines of a nation, what they did to the Red Indians, because they could have learned quite a lot from the civilization of the Asians they found there.
Because they were young people that were idiotic,
yes.
They went and destroyed civilizations
in order to build something. Now, and again, what we can call the fetishization of the constitutional model. Because there are no elders to listen to.
Yes.
No fireplace where people can
tell stories.
Tell the stories that
folk
the
tales.
constitution becomes now their God. What they can call secular religion. That means so long as they latch onto it, that sometimes does not create condition for cohesion and coherence. Everybody says so long as you believe in the Constitution of America, then Eldorado is going to be yours. That has not happened.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
You know what that hasn't happened? It doesn't happen because of what we call exhaustion of history. If the historical moment becomes exhausted, a nation is caught in a trap of time.
So I agree with you that America is at the threshold of a collapse, cultural collapse.
And the moral collapse.
Of course, moral collapse is what
that led to the cultural collapse.
Yes. And unfortunately, and let's take this dimension, it is at this time of the descent of Euro-Western civilization that our people are so poor that our aspiration is to be in Canada, to be in Europe, to be in America, to be whatever. And it's sad for me to see, because we are not people went to America in the 50s and 60s.
Sure, they did.
When Nnamdi Azikiwe went,
all over the 20s and 30s and 40s and so on.
There was still some humanity left in those countries.
Absolutely.
People who are going today and who are going to give birth to children or are already going with children today, I'm asking myself, they are going to a ruthless
environment without soul, a soulless environment. Actually, in autonomy of values, my main philosophical work, affirmation, determination, and reinvention of mediation, value and reality, they are free-floating elements. How do you capture them? How do you manage them? How do you allow them to operate the way they want to operate, like Niger we do? The end note to that work is called the culture of decadence. It's about the US.
The culture of decadence.
Now, you know why? In 1962, if I'm not mistaken, John Kenneth Galbraith wrote a book called The Culture of Contentment. Contentment is led from affluent society, the post-war recovery. The US was unscathed completely, unscathed by the Second World War. Russia was prostrate. Europe was completely ruined. Japan had suffered nuclear strike.
So America
was the ascendancy. So now affluence bred contentment. Contentment will always bring decadence. It is the formulations of decadence and intimations of decadence we are witnessing today. By the neutralization of gender,
Can you imagine
and the debanalization of gender too?
The denial of a fundamental biological fact
that is scientifically proven. It doesn't require any
that
spiritual testimony.
That human beings had recognized and affirmed for millions of years.
Further, there's something I watched on surprisingly TikTok. A white Caucasian lady, middle-aged. She posted something and said, "My son woke up and said, I'm now a cat. And because of the laws of the land,
yes, you have to
and fear of arrest and detention, whatever it is, and oppressing the little boy, said, I now respect you as a cat. What do I call it? They say, call me a cat mom. That's my name. Dead seriousness. He fell sick. She now took him to the veterinary doctor and said, this cat is sick. Can you find therapy for his malady? He said, look, woman, I cannot treat him. In that
I'm a vet.
He said, but he's a cat.
Oh, he says he's a
cat. He says he's a cat. So you're about to attend to him, or there may be problem for you. You refuse to treat somebody who has come to you as a cat, and you're a vet doctor. He said, okay, I will not punish this guy. I will not even report him. But it's a harsh lesson for everybody out there. When you say that you are something, please take it to the fullest extent.
A logical conclusion.
You can't say you're a cat and expect a human doctor to treat you because of the human anatomy. You're already a cat. That's the absurdity of this neutralizing gender.
There's a case of a transgender who had prostate cancer.
Okay, now you have to find
it's only a man. It's men that are supposed to. But you're a woman transgender and you say you are having prostate cancer. So where is it coming from?
Further, the signs are already there, incipient signs, and it is globalization, which for me is a reformulation.
So what is the impact on us? Because you see, you have just mentioned globalization.
Yeah.
So we are not insulated.
No, we're not insulated.
What is the impact of this cultural decadence on the Nigerian African society?
Okay, there are so many dimensions to that. There are brilliant Nigerian and African writers, creative writers, novelists, poets, short story writers, who dwell in the diasporic spaces in the West, in the US particularly, who have latched onto this thesis, this idea. Because one, it leads to mainstream promotion. Sometimes it is careerism. May not be actually a subconscious desire to really be something different. But this is something cultural fadism. If you celebrate in your works of literature the growing LGBT, and it doesn't end with LGBT,
no,
Q,
it's
I,
Q plus,
and so on there. If you celebrate that with a sense of urgency, you are appropriated into the domain of the police, into the cultural and academic domain. You are celebrated as a hero and a heroine. You are given all the support you require.
Today's Hollywood culture.
So you find that is driving so many writers, even those resident here, are emulating the style and method of this cultural expression. If you're going to be straight, write about man and the woman relationship, it's no longer appealing to all the rich resources you have in Europe and the US. You must create either lesbian relationship, gay relationship, transgender relationship, even sometimes complete neutralization of what they call neuter gender.
Yes,
there's a brilliant African writer, half from Abuja State, half from I think from Sri Lanka. Emezi, and she went to what you can call a stream. She started taking hormone drugs and then slashed off her breasts and then have them sewn up, completely dry and dead, as it were. And she described, so I'm not saying something that is going to appear that Udenta is just, saying something to diminish her. No, she said it herself in an essay she wrote when she removed her fallopian tube and her uterus, how they inserted the loop, how it touched the nerve right inside, and the sucking noise she had as they were taking all this out. That's a Nigerian child who is now living in New York, who is now celebrating this kind of lifestyle.
Who has appropriated,
completely embraced, and is now not only celebrating and actually, at the level of celebration and the level of advocacy that is almost unprecedented. So that's going to have an impact. People read her works. They feel inspired by her. They could try it too. So the global world is actually a late capitalist world. And when I tell people that globalization is not a new phenomenon, at ancient time, it's always the police and the margins. It's always a one-way movement. You don't find a lot of white folks here. You find only those looking for money, those in the business community, looking for oil, looking for gold, uranium, lithium, and so on. You find the hordes of African children fleeing decomposing post-colonial states through Lampedusa and dying in the ships, dying in the sea. It happened with ancient Rome, it happened with ancient Greece, it happened during the colonial time in England. So every hegemony will create its own construct of globalization. US is now the dominant hegemony, even though it's unraveling. So everybody now latches on to cultural expressions there, social expressions and ideological expressions.
Just before you came to this studio, we had a chat in the chapel. And I was intrigued when we were talking about MBA inviting Portable for their entertainment.
Okay.
You know the story?
I heard the story.
Nigerian Bar Association.
Someone told me today, they said, why Portable of all people?
Invited
MPA.
Some crazy musician.
A sober organization, very conservative, invited Portable.
Some underculture kind of entertainer. Subculture, you call it, entertainer to entertain
such
them.
a solemn platform.
And then a number of lawyers walked out because they couldn't associate
culturally
MBA,
with that
culturally.
MBA,
They are learned people. So then the discussion came as to why is it that young people even like to follow such people, because such people have millions of followers. A young man got up and said, young people like to follow mad people. Okay,
now it may not just be as easy as that. A fellow, of course, one of the Frankfurt School critical theorists, the second generation, Herbert Marcuse, wrote a book called Eros and Civilization. His idea is, how do you marry Freud and Marx to create a new counter-hegemonic order? His works actually led to what is called a new left, the burning of bra, the removing of pants and so on there, and then the so-called sex revolution of the 60s. His discovery, right or wrong, is that Freud tried to suppress the ego in favor of the id. That means that aspect of person that could lead to excessive energy, excessive drive, including sexuality, must be tampered down. And that side, which is work-oriented, rational, logical, must be enhanced for civilization to occur. He revised it that no, explosion of sexual instinct and sexual pleasure could actually be a potential for revolutionary eruptions. So young people, as you see, when you see the lyrics that is sexually explicit, you see the nudity on stage and so on there, it's a form of protest. It's a form of social and cultural protest. A failed older generation that they believe they didn't care for them, doesn't give a fuck or a hoot about who they are and their needs, and in life, whose politics have failed them, governance model has failed them. The youth are completely excluded from participation in the cultural, social, and political processes of the day.
Clearly, I mean, any observer in the adult generation should recognize that these are protest actions.
Very serious
ones. They are protesting against a society that has failed them.
And they didn't care for them. So why would you care how they behave?
And then they are looking for human expressions of that
dissent,
existential protest.
The protest.
Yeah. So that dissent against everything that we hold as civilized, as normative. So you look at hairstyle, and then somebody colors his hair blue.
They deconstruct it. And bring something else.
You look at dressing, they deconstruct
it. They tear their stuff and
so
on there in order to look different and look weird.
I mean, when you were in school, you were taught how to dress to look properly, like a civilized person. And so on. Today, somebody who is in the university
looks like dressing rags.
Yeah, dressing rags.
And they believe that rag empowers them. By drawing attention to that so-called bad behavior, they feel empowered.
So those of us who are students of psychology, we say clearly it is a cry for meaning.
Yes, it's a cry.
It's a cry for attention.
Attention.
And a cry for meaning. It is Viktor Frankl,
Yeah.
the logotherapist, the Vienna School of Psychoanalysis guy, who says that the major scourge of the modern generation is existential nihilism.
Yeah. So now nihilism, some people misconstrue to be chaos and disorder. That's not what it is. Nihilism is from nothing. That means people believe in nothing.
Nothing.
People hold nothing sacred.
Life is nothing.
Look, okay, take for example Russian literature of the 19th century, where they have this same kind of cultural dissonance and a lot of disconnect or discontinuities between the past and the present. When Gogol have to write, fathers and sons. That's Turgenev. Ivan Turgenev, fathers and sons.
Oh, Ivan Turgenev.
Yeah, Turgenev. And they talked about a conversation with Bazarov and some other people in a party. He said, look at him. He's a nihilist. So that means he's an anarchist. He believes in disorder and chaos. He said, no.
No.
He is from nihil.
Yes.
That is nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing completely. So nothing is held sacred. Nothing is sacrosanct. Nothing is protected or normative anymore. Which means I look at society with distaste because there's nothing happening that legitimates in our own construction of the mind.
We have to close this session, but I need to let our viewers know that Udenta is 60 years old. Congratulations,
well,
my brother.
Thank you, Father. And this is crossing what they call the sixth floor,
yes,
the diamond age.
Yes.
And now induction to the Council of Elders.
I mean, join our club.
When a friend, my friend and great mentor, Atawanko told me that Ebenezer Babatokwe is we turned 60 at a certain time in the 90s. We must go. I said, what is important? He said, that's the transition from youthhood to be an elder.
To be an elder.
Now they can listen to you in the village with seriousness and with attention to say, you have spoken like an elder.
You are becoming senior citizens.
You're becoming senior citizen.
I mean, so I want to congratulate Udenta. Udenta, he has contributed immensely. And we shall join you in thanking God and praying that the 21 books that you brought out to mark 60 years, they are on the one hand. But I hope you know that there has been a research done for Nobel laureates where they say most Nobel laureates are in their 80s.
Sure.
So we are looking forward for the next 30 years.
And see what happens.
And see what happens. And how you will, all these experiences and knowledge.
Constellations
of them.
At the end of times and say,
for the benefit
of humanity.
For the benefit of humanity, for posterity.
Absolutely.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And God bless you.
Thank you, Father.
Thank
it's
you.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.